About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of Noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
This is Noetic Moments, the show that explores what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be much fuller if we understood it better. I am Ruth Miller, a longtime student of consciousness, cybernetics, and culture, and through this series of programs, I'm introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research, and I'm explaining some of their ideas and experiments. I'll also explore some relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org. Now, over the course of these programs, we've learned that although medical world defines consciousness as what we're aware of right now, most of what goes on in the mind is not in our conscious awareness at all, but goes on in unconscious processes. From Jung and Freud and other early researchers, we learned that our minds can be thought of as having three aspects. The first, our normal awareness, the conscious mind. Then, what keeps our bodies going and include our beliefs about threats and dangers, the subconscious mind. And what connects us with our highest ideals and values and guides us in our actions, the superconscious mind. We learned that we can change our state of consciousness so we're aware of different aspects of mind at different times. And then we learned that the brain modifies whatever sensory signals it receives to fit past patterns of experience, following a default network or structure in the brain. This means that we perceive, we hear, see, taste, smell, and feel what we expect to experience based on the past. We also saw that our body is often responding faster than nerve impulses or chemicals can travel from the brain, and often before the brain is even aware of it, our consciousness. Some experiments have demonstrated that a person's mind continues to perceive and process for as much as several hours, even when the brain and heart are flatlined and the person has been declared dead. And we've learned that no one has yet been able to pinpoint how ideas and thoughts are formed in brain tissue. Well, based on all this, many scientists have come to accept that what we call mind is not the product of the electrochemical activity of the brain, but is in fact the activity of a field that surrounds and permeates the whole body, and perhaps can be equated with the quantum field, out of which all matter and energy are formed. Now, there's a lot of support for this notion that mind is a field that is integrally part of the quantum field, the first one being the original experiments in quantum physics, where the subatomic building blocks of the universe show up as energy or matter, depending on whether a mind is present to observe them. We know that people's bodies and their pets have been observed to change when someone they're connected with turns attention their way. We have seen that the pattern of numbers in what should be random grids on computer screens and printouts can be changed by an individual thinking and by the collective mind in the Global Consciousness Project. Now, recognizing that fields are patterns of vibration, different patterns resonate with others. So individual minds, the field that is unique to each of us, can affect others by resonating with them. And more, there's evidence that the equations of quantum mechanics, relativity, and computer learning algorithms can describe the role of consciousness in the formation of matter. Now, some neuroscientists are looking at how the two hemispheres of our brain are involved in how we receive and transmit information from the world, primarily through the left hemisphere, and from this field of mind, primarily through the right. All of these understandings help it to explain things like what's called the law of attraction, how the world around us mirrors what our consciousness is focusing on, how we can access information through insight, intuition, and channeling, how dreams affect both the body and our own and other people's awareness, how music affects the brain, the body, and connects us with other fields of mind, how we can enhance or slow down healing through thoughts, emotions, and visualization, how remote viewing and telekinesis work, how we can get into a state of flow in which the brain and the mind are in sync and maximize our effectiveness. You can catch up on our past shows on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you'll also find links to the clips, books, and authors that I mention. And we're getting caught up on those links. This week, I thought we'd continue this discussion of mind as field, of mind as quantum presence, of mind as consciousness that has existed since, well, apparently before the Big Bang. There's a marvelous YouTube put together by Jonas Rosen, in which he's put together clips from a bunch of other YouTubes. I'll have the link on the website. It's called The Case for the Quantum Soul. Partway through, we get to hear some of the arguments. I'll let them take over.
The more we know about the physical brain, the more we realize it's not the creator of consciousness. It's very clearly related to consciousness. But again, it's important to see that it's more of a reducing valve or filter.
Many honest scientists should admit that consciousness is the greatest mystery of science, and that we don't know exactly how it works. The brain's involved in it in some way, but we're not sure how. Could be that the brain generates consciousness the way a generator makes electricity. If you hold to that paradigm, then of course you can't believe in life after death. When the generator's broken, consciousness is gone. But it's equally possible that the relationship, and nothing in neuroscience rules it out, that the relationship is more like the relationship of the TV signal to the TV set. And in that case, when the TV set is broken, of course the TV signal continues.
Physicists sometimes take some aspects of the universe as fundamental building blocks: space and time and mass. If you can't explain consciousness in terms of the existing fundamentals, space, time, mass, charge, then as a matter of logic, you need to expand the list. The natural thing to do is to postulate consciousness itself as something fundamental, a fundamental building block of nature.
This perspective that consciousness exists beyond the brain as a fundamental force, fundamental reality, is not just some theoretical idea. Actually, all of our scientific advancements on the cutting edge of both neuroscience and quantum physics are pointing to this conclusion, that consciousness exists beyond the brain, beyond this human lifetime, and ultimately beyond this universe. The more that we learn about quantum physics, the more that we see that this is an inescapable conclusion.
Consciousness can enter quantum physics to collapse the possibilities into actuality only if, now listen to this, consciousness is transcendent, consciousness is unitive, one consciousness only, and consciousness is us. We are that consciousness.
There can't even have been an origin of the universe unless there was some consciousness there to perceive it coming into being. This is a lesson that all physicists eventually are coming to. Consciousness must enter into the field of physics in a direct way through something called the observer effect. You observe an atomic system, and the atomic system changes from a field of possibilities into something that's solid and physical and real and right there in front of your eyes. This is a fact of physics that we have to deal with. If the Big Bang occurred out of nothing and produced a material universe, then there had to have been quantum mechanics operating at the moment of the Big Bang, and that means there had to have been an observer.
Well, all of those voices were various scientists, neuroscientists and physicists primarily, including Amit Goswami, Fred Alan Wolf, and a number of other lesser-known figures in the field, all of them saying that the only way that the world, the physical universe, can exist is, assuming there's any validity at all to quantum mechanics, and it seems to be the most highly accurate theory that's ever been developed, because of all the ways it's been tested and proven, that consciousness has to underlie, has to be the basis, has to pre-exist any form of matter. And therefore, the body that we have is not the source of our consciousness, but is the result of our consciousness, which has profound implications for all kinds of things, and we've talked about some of those over the last couple of years. It means that whatever I'm experiencing in my body right now is a function of all of the thoughts and feelings and memories and beliefs and sensations that I have held on to and fears that I have been taught to have, and is not pre-existing those and is not the cause of those. And when we change states of consciousness, well, there's been a lot of work with multiple personalities that suggests that different states of consciousness show up with different symptoms and structures in the body. One personality, if you will, or set of parameters for a state of consciousness might have multiple sclerosis while another one doesn't, or diabetes while another one doesn't. I personally observed this, and it's in the literature. So what is going on here? What is it that we're talking about? Basically, we're saying that the individual frequency pattern of consciousness that is defined as an individual person or mind is the basis for the form and experience that the body is having. And that's it. It's the basis for the form that the body observes in the universe. It is the basis for the forms that the body is capable of bringing forth into the universe. The unique pattern of energy that is one individual mind is a pattern within a much larger field, the quantum field or the Akashic field. And then that leads to this notion that if what I am is a part of something greater than I am, if the individuality of myself is a part of a totality that is one, well, as a number of these scientists are suggesting, we're starting to talk about a soul within a soul, or perhaps a spirit within spirit. And that leads to a much more intellectually satisfying and logical and coherent understanding of the nature of the mind, the brain, and spirit overall. We now have a way of thinking about who we are that sees us as totally connected with all that is, never separated, never isolated, and always having access to all that is through consciousness, which is what we are, and which is what all the world, all the universe, and perhaps many universes are based on. That's pretty amazing and opens up all kinds of possibilities. And then we can go further, because we can talk about this individuality, this individual field within a larger field as, well, having a lot of the properties of the larger field, including, well, being here from before time, from before the Big Bang, if that's how things started, from before matter and energy existed. The individuality that each of us is, the individual expression of the one that each of us is, can be seen to be eternal, to have existed since before time began, and to be part of something that will continue to exist long after what we call time comes to an end. And herein lies the notion that who and what we are is, well, quantum soul. That is infinite information, infinite potential, bringing forth this body, this particular form of matter, in a universe that is constantly forming and unforming in lots of different ways, in which all the information is stored. If you recall our show on the Akashic field, Irvin Laszlo points out that information is a form of energy. Energy cannot be created, energy cannot be destroyed, therefore information cannot be destroyed. Therefore the information, the particular pattern that each of us is in the whole of all that is, must continue to exist in some form. That's the piece that we don't know. Do we, in fact, take on pure energy forms as, well, light bodies? Or do we become something else? And that whole question about what's happening when the body that we are manifesting is no longer functioning has people exploring for thousands of years, right? And it turns out there is a whole set of spiritual traditions that believes they have the answer. And we'll look at that at another show. Well, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Noetic Moments, a radio show exploring what consciousness is, how it works, and how our lives can be greatly enhanced as we understand it more fully. I am Ruth Miller, your host, and that sound tells me it's time to shift our gears. To look at a book, to answer any questions, you email to ruth@noeticmoments.org, and maybe take a look at what's going on in the news that can help us understand the role that our state of consciousness plays in our experience. One of the things that's been going on alongside the emergence of machine learning systems that we've been calling AI is the development of systems whereby people can learn to control other objects through the brain's activity. So the mind tells the brain what to do, and then the brain tells the objects what to do. These are called brain-computer interfaces. And there's two approaches. One has been pretty hyped by the media. That's Elon Musk, who's developed what he calls Neuralink. I'll let him talk a little bit about that.
Neuralink and the initial devices will really just be pretty basic. It'll be about restoring functionality to people who've lost their connection between their brain and their body. So you can imagine, like, if, say, Stephen Hawking could talk or communicate as fast as somebody with a fully functioning body. Mm-hmm. That would be amazing. So that's like what we're trying to do. That's our first application, is to restore functionality to quadriplegics, tetraplegics, and people who've just, for whatever reason, no longer have a connection between, or have a limited connection between their brain and their body. Mm-hmm. And then the second application would be restoration of eyesight. So if somebody's gone completely blind, maybe even has lost the optic nerve, you can actually still directly stimulate the neurons in the visual part of the cortex. So you can give direct vision to the brain.
So what he's describing, that was the voice of Elon Musk, by the way. What he's describing is a chip that is planted in the brain. It is an open brain surgery in a particular location, connecting to a particular set of nerves, so that the information that has not been getting to the spine, or in the case of the vision, the optic nerve, can get there. And so that when someone chooses or wills to move, that message is received and then transmitted from the brain to the part of the body that it needs to be. Very powerful and exciting stuff. And it has worked in chimpanzees, and they are starting literally this last few months, to try them on a few people who have been very limited in their motion. Now, the other approach is not to insert anything in the body at all, but to take advantage of this field, this electromagnetic field that is surrounding the brain and the body. You may have seen or heard or even taken an electroencephalogram, which has sensors placed on the skull that then can interpret what parts of the brain are doing what. Well, because of EEGs, electroencephalograms are called EEGs, we now know pretty much where the receiver transmitters are located in the brain, so people have developed headdresses or headsets. So people have developed headsets that can be worn in a way that allows people to literally change what's going on the computer screen directly. Now, we talked earlier on, many months ago, about the fact that some computer operators have learned how to modify what's going on in the computer screen. And it's kind of difficult, and it is not infallible. Whereas this new approach is encouraging people to be able to move a mouse on a screen, to play a video game on a screen, using this headset. I'll let them explain it.
BCIs, or brain-computer interfaces, are systems that link our brains directly to computers. Tech entrepreneur Elon Musk, for example, wants to merge the human mind with AI, for which we would have to have a chip implanted into our brain. That's pretty invasive. But there are also non-invasive brain-reading tech. One type measures electrical activity on the scalp. In medicine, they use EEG caps for this, but sleeker-looking wearables are available too.
You only have to think, and the lamp dims the light, and the video begins to play, all thanks to this wearable. The headband is a non-invasive brain-computer interface, or BCI. It was developed by a neurotechnology startup from France. Sensors in the headband read brainwaves and translate them into commands for electronic devices. BCIs like this could be game changers for video games. They could enhance or even replace controllers, allowing for greater speed and more intuitive gameplay. Being able to control devices with thought is especially useful for situations when you need your hands for other purposes. A kit like this costs around $400 US.
Interesting technologies with all kinds of possibilities and, of course, potential downsides.
Once these measures become available outside of the clinical context, then pressure to use them will probably increase. We've seen this in other areas, such as beauty or sport, where people feel pressured to reach certain standards.
This technology also lends itself to other uses like military purposes. The helmets shown in this film have electromagnets as used in EEG. These are supposed to be able to control the brains of soldiers in the future in order to influence their anxiety or their aggression.
What about pain? Can you stop me feeling it?
Experts believe that brain-computer interfaces could provide a tactical advantage in future wars by facilitating quicker decision-making, better oversight, and longer endurance. But how ethical would it be to manipulate people in this way? And what would the long-term consequences be? If technology can help people who are paralyzed regain independence, then that's wonderful. But I worry about companies having access to my brainwaves. Our thoughts and feelings are the most intimate data we have. So data protection is more important in this area than anywhere else.
Ah, well, the double-edged sword of any new technology. Great potential for healing or helping people to feel more empowered, at the same time for destruction. As with all technologies in our culture, it's going to be an interesting process. Always a mixed bag. And yet, we have reason to understand that who and what we truly are is not about these technologies, is not about the way that matter takes form through our consciousness, but is about our consciousness and how it is evolving and changing and growing. And that's why I'm interested in the noetic sciences. Well, that's it for today's show. We are out of time for today, but remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where there are links to archived past shows, along with the titles and other resources we refer to on the show, and where you can send me your comments and questions, which I will do my best to get answered the next time we're on the air. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments, recorded in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon. And have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about Noetic Sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.